Welcome to Instant Deck Techs. The aim of this series is to give you a short, concise guide on how to build a certain deck. It won't cover every card, but we'll go through all the categories and go over the types of cards needed to make the deck work. Any card mentioned will be down in the description below. The command of this deck is Torens, Fist of the Angels. It is 1 green-white for a 2/2 legendary creature human cleric. It has training, which is whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It also has, whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green and white human soldier creature token with training. This is going to be a human tribal deck with a +1/+1 counter subtheme. All throughout the deck, we'll be looking for cards that reward us for playing humans and putting counters on our creatures, so do keep an eye out for them as we go. First up is our card draw. There's a number of different effects we can use to get to the solid 8 bits we need to make the deck function. First up is spells that draw us cards when a creature enters the battlefield. As this deck is creature heavy, I would say these are the most solid bits of card draw available to us. The next bit of card draw rewards us for the number of creatures that we've made. Most of them should end up with counters on them at some point, so Inspiring Call will do a lot of work for us. Shamanic Revelation and Camaraderie really let us go from a strong position to a commanding position, and the fact the latter serves as a mini anthem as well is very nice. The other thing that a creature-based deck can reliably do is attack for damage. That's where Toski and Ohran Frostfang will play out really nicely as cards that reward us for those swings. The other thing that happens when creatures swing is that they die. We can take advantage of this with cards like Skullclamp and the made for this deck Laid to Rest. Both of them will be really great at refilling our hand. Moving over to our ramp, we want a large portion of this to be on creatures, so we get the trigger from our commander. I would however recommend running some other effects just for some diversity. First up is Mana Dorks. These generate us additional mana while also triggering our commander and creating a creature token. Ramp and a board state is a pretty good deal. A different version of these is creatures that go and get a land from your library. Again, getting the lands out of our deck while adding to our board state. It's worth mentioning, however, that it can still be worth running 1 or 2 bits of ramp on instants or sorceries. The main reason for this is that board wipes are aplenty in Commander, and while they don't make tokens, having 1 or 2 bits of ramp that can't be wrathed give you that extra bit of resilience. Moving back over to the creatures, first we have cards that let our other creatures and tokens tap for mana. Katilda let all those humans tokens ramp us ahead, or once they have a counter on them, Rishkar can do the same. The next option is individual creatures that can tap for an insane amount of mana. We're making so many human tokens in this deck that getting Circle of the Dreams Druid and Heronblade Elite to pop off won't be difficult at all. Another card that helps us ramp ahead is Karametra. This deck is all about playing creatures, so Karametra is just bonus value for what the deck is already trying to do, and what's best is that it gets lands out of the deck, which also can't be wrathed. For our interaction, we'll want a bit of a split. Some on creatures, so we're still always making tokens, and then some on instants and sorceries. For the creatures, where possible, I'd look to have them on humans, for that added synergy. Cathar Commando and Hopeful Initiate are both new cards that are a great example of this. When it comes to instants and sorceries, as we're in white, we have access to some of the most efficient bits out there. We have Exile effects for our targeted removal, and we have access to a great selection of board wipes, so run the best ones that you have available to you. Being a creature-based deck, we'll want to run some protection, as most of our best and key pieces can be shot down with the Doomblade. You want to look for spells that can either protect our whole team, so something like Heroic Intervention, or cards that make our board much harder to deal with, so creatures like Sarith and Sagada will both be nice additions. Next up is some +1/+1 counter synergy cards. At a baseline, all these tokens have training, so they can naturally get bigger by themselves. But we can speed that up a little and make our board much more threatening with some spells that put counters on all of our creatures. For this section, I either like effects that add counters to all of our creatures already on the board, so things like Pledge of Unity and Mikaeus the Lunarch, or effects that put counters on creatures when they come in, so things like Good Fortune Unicorn and Juniper Order Ranger. The reason for this is maximising the amount of counters that you can get. This is Commander after all. Putting 1 counter on 1 creature per turn doesn't cut it here. The most busted of these effects is Cathar's Crusade, as it combines both of these things that we're trying to do. The main thing to remember when including it is to make sure you pack enough dice, as things get big pretty quickly. Next we have some cards that add to the amount of counters that get added to a creature. As we're mainly going wide with our counters, these effects will be really good at pushing that counter production to the next level, with Conclave Mentor being a standout. Another cool card for the deck is something like Hamza, Guardian of Avacyn. It can very easily cost just a green and a white to cast, and then once it's out, it drops the cost of all of our future creatures. Then we have some cards that reward us for having counters on all of our creatures, in the form of granting them evasion. Giving our whole board flying and trample will be great ways of ending the game, and they become must-kill targets for our opponents. Talking of win cons, let's go over some more dedicated ways of winning the game. First up is cards that double the amount of tokens the deck can create, as getting 2 tokens every time you cast a creature is obviously really good. If you have these, then they can be a great addition to the deck. If you don't have them already, then I would wait for the inevitable reprint and pick one up then, as they are just so expensive at the moment. Next up is Anthem effects. These colours have plenty of options in this section, and they'll do a great job at making our team really scary. On screen here are ones that mainly add to the human synergy. If when you're building your deck, you've gone more all in on the +1/+1 counters than the human synergy, you can swap some of these out for some of the other buffs in these colours. There is really plenty of options to choose from. Moving on, we now have the instant kill cards. These can be as cheap or expensive as you want. The main thing you're looking for is a buff effect that gives something like trample. So you can swing through for so much damage it doesn't matter what your opponents have. Another card I find myself playing in more and more decks is Champion of Lambult. With all the creatures we're making and all the tokens and buffs flying around, this can make a whole team unblockable very quickly. Once you've played with it, you'll have a hard time going back. Rounding off the deck with some utility lands, there's a couple of nice options that we can consider. First up is cards that add counters to our board, with things like Gavany Township and Ohran Reef the Vastwood. They're great additional ways of buffing up our team. I think running other proliferate cards can be a little bit gilding the lily, so to speak, but when it's on a land and basically free to include in the deck, I think it's a nice addition. Then we have 2 lands in our colours with Hideaway, some extra free card advantage that won't be too hard to trigger in the deck. The rest of your mana base will be very dependent on what you have available to you. We've recently released a video with some advice on building a deck with a budget mana base, which might be of help. Until next time, please like, share and subscribe, and let us know down in the comments if there are any commanders you'd like to see a deck tech on. Thank you very much for watching.